Restoring the name of a great president, William McKinley, to Mount McKinley in Alaska. He was the big tariff sheriff, they used to call him, and made a lot of money. Our country became very rich, and when he was assassinated, Teddy Roosevelt became president, and he spent all of that money that was made from tariffs. The money was so enormous, and they built the thing called the Panama Canal.
You don't hear many people reference McKinley. Killed by an anarchist, shot in the stomach. Even though he was very fat, it ended up killing him. Joining me now, David Keene, editor-at-large, Washington Times. David, not many people bring up McKinley. Shoot, you don't ever hear his name. You do hear Teddy Roosevelt's name, but people forget about our different economic policies back then.
Well, back then, prior to Wilson, the tariffs were used as the major way of raising revenues for the government. That changed at the beginning of the 20th century. But there's no question that during that period, tariffs were, as Trump likes to look at them, as a main source of revenue, as well as a source of protectionism. You remember back in the 18th century and the 19th century, the newly formed United States was what we could today call a developing country. And oftentimes developing countries protect their infant industries with tariff walls as those industries develop and mature. And that's what was going on at that time.
Okay, so are we past that phase now? At what point in time does a country move past that phase?
Well, we're certainly past the stage of a developing country, although you could argue that much of our industry is in decline just for age reasons, because, for example, one of the things the president's been talking about in recent days is the problem we have with the maritime trades, with building and equipping ships, where China is outstripping us by 1,000 ships a year. One of the reasons for that, from an economic standpoint, is that a nation's competitiveness in that depends almost entirely on how new its shipbuilding facilities are. So that, for example, our shipyards, which in many cases are 100 years old or more, are competing against shipyards that are 10 or 15 years old. And the technology, just as an example, we talk about wages, but I know when I looked some years ago at building a ship in Korea versus building it in the United States, the problem was it took 3 to 4 times as many man hours to build it in the United States as it did in Korea, because we were using antiquated methods, and we still are. So many of these industries have sort of sat on their laurels, if you will, and have not increased or kept up with the competitiveness of the rest of the world. So in that sense, much of the American manufacturing infrastructure in particular is behind the times. So that's true. The other problem is that while there's been a general acceptance in the course of the 20th and 21st century of the macro advantages of free trade, there has never really been a situation in which free trade exists, so that you've got countries imposing tariffs on other countries, while those countries, in this case the United States, lets that go on and suffers losses as a result of those tariff walls. One of the problems that on the trade front that the president confronts is that with these tariffs that he suggested, in today's world, many of the walls that have been put up aren't tariff walls. They're regulatory walls. They're workarounds that other countries have developed. They're things that are hard to quantify, but which, in fact, make it impossible or very difficult for Americans to compete. In Europe, of course, you've got in the agricultural field, where basically Europe subsidizes its entire agricultural thing, not through tariffs, but through bans on the kinds of products that come from the United States. So it's a very difficult thing to achieve what politicians used to call free and fair trade. And it's fair trade, I think, that the president and the current administration is seeking. And that requires you to look at things as they are rather than as you might like them to be.
No doubt. David, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.